Thank you everyone for joining us here today. We are working on getting the cameras to work. We're just fixing that right now. But in the meanwhile, I thought let's introduce ourselves and get started. My name is Haajerah, and I'm a co-founder of Hapondo, and I'll be one of your hosts today. We have a really great topic today, and we are excited to get started and start talking about it. As some of you may already know, last month the state of Qatar announced a new law created to make real estate more attractive to expatriate residents, foreign investors, and real estate funds. Within this law, Qatar has also included a residency program granting benefits to foreigners who invest in Qatar's real estate market. So I'm sure you can see that there's a lot of major changes happening in Qatar's real estate landscape. And our purpose today is to find out more about this new law, explore its impacts, and see how does it affect, you and me. To start us off, I'll introduce my colleagues who are joining us here today. First, we have Jeffrey Asselstine, who is Managing Director of NelsonPark Property. NelsonPark is one of the largest real estate agencies in Qatar. Jeffrey has extensive knowledge about Qatar's real estate scene, and today he's going to be walking us through the details of the new property law, and so that we can find out more about it. We also have Ahmad Khanji, who is my colleague and fellow co-founder of Hapondo. Ahmad is an engineer, he's an investor, he's also a chess enthusiast, but I think we can save that for another webinar to talk about that. So just to give you a background about Hapondo, Ahmed, my two colleagues, Abdullah and Aziz, and myself, we co-founded Hapondo. It is a Qatari-owned platform that helps connect real estate agencies like NelsonPark to their customers by showcasing the best properties in Qatar online at our website, which is hapondo.qa. I think we all know that searching for properties in Qatar isn't necessarily the easiest process. You either have experienced this firsthand or you've heard some stories from your friends. So our goal at Hapondo is to simplify this process and to make things easier and to connect with not only the real estate agencies and brokers, but with the customers as well directly. So right now we're only focusing on rental properties, but it is part of our mission to connect with Qatar's community so that everyone knows more about real estate in Qatar in general. They have better knowledge of the laws, better knowledge of how to get things done. And that's why we're doing this great webinar today. We have been lucky at Hapondo to have been working with Jeffrey and the NelsonPark team from the very beginning, from when we started. So we're really excited to be collaborating on this webinar. Just a few housekeeping things. We're still working on getting the cameras up and running, but you'll see a panel, and on the panel there's an area to chat. So please feel free to introduce yourselves and get to know our fellow attendees that are here. We've had over 200 people register, so there's a good group of people in this webinar. There's also a place on the panel for you to ask questions, and we really want to keep this as engaging as possible. We want to keep this interesting, so feel free to ask your questions, and we are going to be answering them throughout the time. So I think we're going to just get started in 1 minute, just checking now on the cameras. Alrighty, it's really interesting to see the responses to the polls here because it's sometimes different than what we expect. So right now the question was, how did you learn about the property law in Qatar? And majority found out about it from social media, 79%, and 21% found out about it from newspapers and magazines. 0% on TV, which I guess that makes sense, but also very interesting. So great, thank you guys for your responses. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jeffrey, who's going to take us through some of the details of the new law.
Great, thanks, Haajerah. I've also just, I think actually you've just shared the poll results, which is excellent. You see the numbers there. And what I'm going to do now, let me just see if I'll just switch this over to myself. So my screen is now showing. And lucky for all of you, you don't have to see my face. I did a survey, I did a poll of my own staff, and 100% said they preferred not to see my face. So perhaps this is working out better than we thought. So I'm going to walk through the main parts of the law. And as you can appreciate, with any new law in any country for that matter, there's always a case of, law will evolve as it's passed to the community and will be reshaped. And I know I met again this morning with the Ministry of Justice, and they've made they're already kind of fine-tuning some of the parts of the law now to make it a little bit more just to fine-tune it and work through it. So what we'll do is we'll do our very best to give you what we know about the law from our discussions with the Ministry of Justice and from people we've spoken to that are practicing some elements of it as we go through. And then again, feel free to ask questions. We've had a few people that have sent some questions in early already, and we'll try to cover those off as best as we can. So just when we look at the law that's just has come out, so the law really is affecting expatriate investors, so non-Qatari investors into the country. So this cabinet resolution of 2020 that has come out. And what that allows, although there are always areas where foreigners could buy or non-Qataris could buy, this has now been defined as 9 specific freehold areas, which I will share that with you at the very end. You'll have a list of all 9 areas. And actually, before I should also mention, as you may know, this is actually being recorded. So within a day or two after the webinar is finished, this will actually be sent out to you. So if there's any information or if you miss some details on the slide, you can always feel free to screenshot now, but you will get a copy of this webinar sent to you with all the details as necessary. So again, non-Qataris can buy in 5 up to 9 freehold areas, and then a further 16 areas on freehold. So that is available now for foreigners to invest in. So as we move along, this can also be purchased in the names of foreign expatriates in their personal names, as well as they could use an entity. So you could use I'm Canadian, a Canadian entity, any kind of offshore entity that's not owned by Qatar. That's possible. You could even use your Qatari-owned company. Say if you have a traditional 5149 company in Doha, that company could also buy in any of these areas under the terms above. Now here, let's get to the really most important 2 points that everyone is asking about. So although I do not, actually no, I have referred to it in the slide. Previously, the law stated that you were eligible for a residency permit if you bought a property in a selected area with a minimum space of 75 square meters. That is no longer the case in the new law. So from now on, under the new law, instead of a space requirement of 75 square meters, it is now a value requirement. So as long as the property is worth more than 730,000 reals, or as expressed in US dollar terms, $200,000, then the person that bought the property is eligible for a residency permit, and that's available to them. So with that being the case, and apologies if the language I've used the phrase himself or his family, that is also herself and her family. It's not a male thing. The gender does not matter at all. It can be bought in a husband's name, a wife's name, a couple. There's no restriction. So do not be thrown off by the phraseology. But it's really, again, if you buy a property, if you own a property that has a value of $200,000 or 730,000 reals or above, you qualify for a residency permit. The next point is now with the new law, you are allowed to have, if you buy a property that's worth more than $1 million, or in Qatari Rial terms, 3.65 million, you're now eligible for a property residency, so an RP, through property, with the benefits of permanent residency, which includes healthcare, education, and investment in some selected commercial activities. I'll be very clear to point out that I did not use the phrase permanent residency, that you obtain permanent residency. You obtain the benefits of permanent residency, not permanent residency specifically. You receive a residency permit. And I really want to make sure that's clear because it is somewhat misunderstood in the community. And I know some of the earlier press reports use the phrase permanent residency, which is not correct. So again, it's a residency permit through your property with the benefits of permanent residency for those valued at 3.65 million and above. Okay, so moving on. Some other features of this, you can also buy now as foreigners, you can buy units in commercial malls or units in residential complexes anywhere in the country. So outside of the main areas, if properties were to be sold, if the owners, the developments and the malls wanted to sell, or in a compound, if they wanted to sell individual units, that's also possible. So that is a major change from what was in the law previously. You also now can start with an online application. And again, what we do is when we send out the final details, that will send you the URL for this online application that will be available. We'll make sure we put that at the end of the slides when we send them out with the final presentation. So that'll be with you. So an online application is done, and you can actually obtain a pre-approval. So you state the property you want to buy, your passport, your details, and you can actually be pre-approved. So it basically takes away the risk that some people have, or the concern that some people have, whether or not they'd be approved if they buy a property. So that is something that's really, really interesting and a major plus to what we had previously. Extremely helpfully, the Ministry of Justice has set up an office in the Pearl. For those that know the Pearl well, there's a building called the Oyster, which is on the right-hand side of the Pearl when you immediately come on to the island. And in there, during normal office hours, they have an office where you can actually apply in person. And they are exceptionally helpful to people who are applying and working through the process. So they're always there to answer your questions. And again, we'll share their details in the slides when the video is sent out to you. One area of the law, which is, again, very interesting, and is if you, say for myself, if I apply for this residency permit, I also can apply for my mother to benefit from the residency permit. It does need approval by the committee, and there are a number of rules and regulations under which that would be approved or not approved. But the possibility to apply for your parents is available. I do not have a lot of details as far as who would be approved and who would not be approved, but I am aware that that is possible and that you can apply for your parents to also benefit from the residency permit. If you obtain a residency permit through property, and again, this is something that's very new, that was not the case before, you are allowed, or your sponsorship would move from your employer, for those that are working in Qatar, so your sponsorship would move from your employer to the property for residency permit purposes. So I know a lot of people who are maybe looking to retire here, finish their job within a company, and then they could actually just move their sponsorship over when they retire, once they buy the property. But under the new law, you can actually move immediately. And I'll discuss that on a further slide, what some of the ramifications of that would be. And so just a few frequently asked questions that keep coming up. And what I will do is I'll give you the answer to the best of our knowledge, and again, appreciate that the law does evolve. Does the property have to have a title deed in place? So having spoke to the Ministry of Justice again this morning, the Ministry of Justice have confirmed that it must be in place. Frankly, I've heard different views that it doesn't need to be, and some places say that it must be. But from my discussion this morning with the Ministry of Justice, the title deed must be in place in order to obtain an RP for your property. I mentioned that the ministry office is based in the Pearl, but there obviously are a lot of areas where you can buy, not just in the Pearl, but in Lusail, Zigzag, for example, Al4, different places. The ministry office in the Pearl covers all of these areas. They do not just cover properties that are in the Pearl. So wherever your property is, you can use their good offices to assist you. A question that's close to a lot of people's hearts is, particularly for those that are looking for the larger value, in other words, up to the 3.65 million, can they apply? And again, according to the Ministry of Justice, at this stage, you cannot combine two or more properties. It must be the value of an individual property. The feeling I got is that that may be looked at, and I know there are a number of people that believe that may be changing. However, it's in my role in sharing information with you, I must state, as the law is today, that you cannot combine the properties. It must be one individual property to qualify either the 730 level or the 3.65 million level. So a very important thing to know. And again, I referred to this a little bit earlier, is just transferring my sponsorship from my company to my property affect my company benefits. The best advice we can give you today is to check with your company. It's just a wise thing to do. So be sure to check with your company so that in case there may or may not be a change, but you will need to review that with your company directly. The last couple of points on this in regards to the extra benefits that you can get by going to the 3.65 million level. There's talk about education, healthcare, and investment opportunities. On the education side, that actually refers to the children of the property owners up to the age of 18 will receive free education in Qatar if they're enrolled in government schools. All of my children now are above that age. Well, my youngest is just about 18, so unfortunately I've just missed that opportunity. But for those that are looking to invest at the 3.65 million level or above, their children that are below the age of 18 years old will receive free education if they're enrolled at government schools. In regards to which sectors can you invest in, that is yet to be defined. And when I say it's yet to be defined, they're in the process of defining it right now with the Ministry of Economy and Trade. And that should be rolled out hopefully quite soon to provide clarity on which sectors specifically that a foreigner could invest without requiring a local partner. And then the third one is healthcare. And frankly, at both levels of 730,000 and 3.65 million, with your RP, you do have access to Ahmad medical facility and other benefits with the medical system in Qatar. And for those that have used it, will know it's outstanding, as my family and I have been able to benefit from in the past. So that is something which, again, particularly for people who maybe, again, a bit like myself, getting on a little bit and are a bit worried about healthcare, by, again, having a property which qualifies in these tiers and having a residency permit through the property, you have access to healthcare through that system as long as you own the property. And this will allow me to just to bring up again, I referred to before that the investing in property provides you the benefits of a permanent residency, but not permanent residency specifically. And the reason there is that differentiation, it cannot be called permanent residency because permanent residency is permanent. And it would only be permanent if it was based on something other than a property purchase. In other words, you receive all the benefits as long as you own the property. But if once you buy the property and you obtain the residence permit, if you then sell the property, you then lose the benefits of residency permit. So you need to turn in your RP, and the benefits that you've been able to enjoy through the residency permit will then expire. You will no longer have access to those. But as long as you have the property, and as long as everything else continues to be going well, then you'll continue to receive that benefit. Okay, so this is, again, the banker in me cannot help but cover this off. So the question a lot of people ask is, can I have a mortgage on the property? If I have a mortgage, do I still qualify for a residency permit? And the simple but slightly complex answer is yes, it does qualify if you have a conventional mortgage. But if you have an Islamic mortgage, it does not qualify. And the main difference for those that are experts in Islamic finance will know that normally under Islamic mortgage, the title of the property actually goes into the Islamic institution's name as opposed to the normal property purchaser. And as it's in the institution's name, you would not qualify for a residency permit. So the property, it does not have to be paid off in full. It can have a mortgage on the property, but it needs to be conventional. It cannot be Islamic. And just one last point, actually, I'll just go back for 1 second. I think I may have covered it off in a previous slide, perhaps I was a bit quick. The important thing is that you actually have all of that, need to have all that done while you go through. Okay, so let me just go to 2 last slides, and I'm not going to read out all the areas. These are the areas that are available on a 99-year leasehold basis. So they have that opportunity where you can now buy, and the number that's after the areas, so Haajerah 13, Doha Al Jadid 15, those are the postal areas in Qatar. If you're familiar with those, they define the areas for each of those specific places. And the freehold areas are noted below. So obviously West Bay, the Pearl, Al-Khor, Daphna are all covered in that area. You will note, for those of you that have been investing in Qatar for a while, that Lusail is now qualified as a freehold area. And I know quite a few that are on the call, because I've obviously people that have signed up, a lot of you already have property in loose sale, which if you're an expatriate, you would have bought on a 99-year leasehold basis. That will be changing. So it's in process of changing. It hasn't changed yet, although the law has changed, but as with any law, the process is working its way through. So for those that are looking at loose sale, again, this is a major change that is now defined as a freehold area moving forward. So well, in fact, I'm finished. I'll wrap up and hand this back to yourself, Haajerah. Let me just stop showing my screen, and I think I can pass this back to you as the organizer.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jeffrey.
Pleasure.
For those of us who are just joining or joined a bit late, my name's Haajerah, first of all, and Jeffrey just walked us through a bit of the details of the new property law. Our cameras are not working, so if you don't see anything, it's fine. We're just going to talk you through this until we get those up and running. So thank you so much again, Jeffrey, for walking us through this new law. And I think there's a lot of information there, and there's a lot to take on from what we just learned. I think, first of all, one question that I had, and then we can open it up to some of the questions we've been getting a lot from the audiences, is that now there's going to be a lot of focus on not only expatriates or foreigners living in Qatar, but people from abroad who are looking to enter Qatar or invest in Qatar. Do you think right now is a good time for that to be happening?
Absolutely. I've always been, perhaps I should have said at the very beginning, and I didn't say, myself and my family have been living in Qatar now for the last 14 years. And if I look at what I have seen for the last 14 years is just continued improvement, and frankly, in all areas, and in particular, in regards to the law. And this is what we're seeing now. And in particular regards to the law, that the law is improving, which is, when I say improving, it's becoming more and more clear, more and more beneficial to foreign direct investment. If I look at the real estate market itself, on the positive side, we have very solid financial underpinnings in the country. And I think if we look at even the next 2 years, obviously with the World Cup coming, but also with a large amount of investment that the country is making in infrastructure, not only just for the World Cup, but particularly for the oil and gas sector, I think will be really bodes well for the country in the medium to long term, which I'm sure if anyone's actually looking at investing, it's always best to look at medium and long term, not just look at the short term returns or short term benefits. And I think they're very strong, regardless of the way that you look at it.
Okay, thank you, Jeffrey. I have a few questions as well that I'm curious about. Now, since you mentioned foreign direct investment, I'm also interested in knowing, like, what do you think if this law is more attractive for the people that we have here, the expats that we have here, or for people who are abroad or outside of Qatar, that they're going to look at it as an investment opportunity, while the people who are here is going to look at it as an opportunity to kind of have a stable home to stay here in Qatar for the long term, as you mentioned through the presentation. So do you think this law is more attractive to the people abroad or the people who are here already?
That's a great question. Frankly, I think it's attractive to both. So, I'll use myself as an example. For someone that's here and is already investing in the country, both in real estate and in business, I think this, makes it more attractive. It makes it more clear. One of the concerns that people will often have is as they get a little bit older, what access would someone have to healthcare as they get older? And so I think, having that confidence that you can actually invest here and knowing full well that you're not really at risk of losing your ability to live in the country through residency is an incredible benefit. And I can just let you know, just from firsthand knowledge, the amount of inquiries that I've received since the law has been announced from overseas have been incredible. And it's a combination, really. Some people that are looking to, frankly, move here and obtain residency, and others just looking to invest in Qatar who say, I'm not necessarily going to move here, but I'm just more than happy now to invest because I see the way the government's changing the investment law.
Yeah, because that's actually my second question, because I'm wondering like if it would be interesting for people to buy properties here for the purpose of getting the benefits, or for the purpose of creating, let's say, or generating income in general, or let's say, yeah, flipping houses or maybe renting it out or stuff like that. So from what I get from you is that it can be for both things, right? It can be an investment opportunity, and it can be for the benefits themselves for the people who are here, right?
Absolutely, and you know, again, when a lot of times when I meet somebody and I tell them that I work in real estate, the first question they ask me is, "How's the market?" And then the first question I ask them very politely back is, "Well, how are you asking? Are you asking as a tenant, as a buyer, as a seller, an investor?" Depends on where you're coming from. So we're getting calls now from people that are just really are looking to invest 730,000 so they can have the comfort of having an RP. We're asking about calls from people right around again the 3.65 million that want to move up to the next level, and others that are just, no, you know, I just as the laws change, I just feel more comfortable now, and I feel it's more right for me now to be investing in the country. And I want to be careful how this sounds, Ahmed. I think, you know, again, I've been here a long time, and I've always felt extremely welcome. And there's nothing that investors love more than stability. And when, you know, when the government's basically saying, please come, you know, we're looking for people to invest in the country and to stay long term, you know, that's a really positive sign to the market when the government is opening up the doors even more and encouraging people to invest. I think it's always a positive sign.
And jumping now to another topic, maybe the prices, since it's, of course, it's a big factor when it comes to buying properties. What do you think, like, do you think the prices that we currently have are attractive for investors?
Well, I do. I think if you look at the prices today compared to, well, the prices we have in the market today are really some of the best prices I've seen in the last 5 or 6 years. You know, prices were negatively affected by the decline in oil price that we had a few years ago. Yeah. I guess 4 or 5 years ago. That really had a major effect. Then some other, obviously, recent, you know, regional political concerns have, you know, may have had some effect on prices. I actually don't think a major effect, but much more the price of oil has had some effect. So if I look at now as a time to invest compared to 4 or 5 years ago, you know, the prices are better now to invest than they were then. So I think it makes a much better time to buy.
And what do you think about, let's take the Pearl as an example. What do you think about the experience that we had there? Because the Pearl has always been an area that non-Qataris can buy property there. So you think it was a good example that you think Qatar followed it or used it to apply it for other areas around the country?
Yeah, and I think it was, yeah, you're right. It was absolutely the first. I mean, the Pearl really and Zigzag Tower were kind of the first 2 places where foreigners could buy their own property. And you know, I think a lot of really good things have happened and encouraged a lot of people to invest. And as with any new system, new methodology, you know, a lot of lessons were learned. And I think as we move into other areas, including Daphne and different places now, I think that I think it's important that people actually can invest and feel the comfort of doing so. And you know, as and when we all get more experience, I think things will only improve that much more.
Okay, I find that interesting. It means like the Pearl did well and the Zigzag did well, so that's actually a good thing. And you can see in the Pearl it's very lively, and we have a lot of people there all the time, basically. And since I'm representing Hapondo, I would like to talk about the rental market a little bit. Because if we're going to look at the properties and as an investment opportunity, like let's say somebody who's going to buy a property, because the law also allows that somebody should rent it out, basically, to make it a kind of a business. So you think the rental prices as well, like will the law impact the rental prices or the rental market in general? I'm not talking about the Pearl specifically, because we know this has always been the situation there, but I'm talking about other areas, especially when it comes to villas and Daphne, for example. Do you think it will change these prices when it comes to rental, not necessarily buying?
Yeah, great question. I don't know if it'll necessarily affect the prices on rentals. You know, the rental prices are affected much more by larger macroeconomic what's the general demographic of the country, what's happening with the labor market, that really would have a larger impact. But one impact which I really believe is that I think you'll see in places like Daphne, I think you'll see over the next few years, foreigners who maybe are renting there, who will now look at buying there. And just in general, to use a general comment, normally homeowners will take greater pride in their home than they do if they're a tenant. I mean, I'm a homeowner and a tenant, and as much as I take pride in where I'm living, if I'm a tenant, I still take more pride if it's a house that I own. And I think you'll see in these areas, as more and more people begin to buy their own properties, you'll see that the areas, the great English phrase of gentrification, where the areas just improve, the overall properties improve as people invest in their own homes, which they wouldn't necessarily invest if it's a rental property. So I think there's some very positive knock-on effects.
Yeah, I think people take care more of what they own than what they rent, right?
So, yeah, true.
So, and what do you think about the areas? Because what do you think, like, what the intention of adding these new areas, especially like West Bay or the Lagoon, for example, or Al-Khor, Kharaj, Aneza? Do you think like these areas are attractive for foreigners to let's say live in, not necessarily invest? Because like I know that most of these areas are like mostly Qataris are living there right now as their permanent residency, let's say, or permanent location. Do you think that foreigners would find it difficult to live in places like these, or would it push them away, that they know that it's only Qataris living there, or do you think it's going to be fine?
I think it'll be absolutely fine. I mean, one thing I've lived in various parts of the Middle East over the years, and I feel, I think the relationship between Qataris and expatriates is extremely strong. It's not like other places where you may not see a local national, or you may not work with one, or you may not encounter day to day. Whereas here, we're very much, we're together all the time. And I think it's a wonderful thing about Qatar. And I think from a housing perspective, that'll continue to be the case. It's something like Al-Khor. I wouldn't be surprised if some particularly longer-term expatriates say they wouldn't mind a place there, perhaps for the weekend, for a weekend break place or something like that. Have something maybe in Daphne that they live in, and then a weekend getaway, just like they would in their home countries. So I think that'll be, they'll probably just it'll encourage more integration. I think integration is already quite good. I think it'll just encourage more in the future. I'm happier to be your neighbor, Ahmed, if you'll have me in your area.
I'm happy for that too, as well, to be honest. I live in Daphne, by the way, if you would like to.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I'm nearby. Another interesting thing about this law actually is the freehold versus the leasehold. Like, I think if you would like give us your perspective about that, and your insight on which is more attractive, or the reason behind like having this area as a leasehold or freehold.
Yeah, I'm a fan, obviously, of freehold over leasehold, and I think that's for, with anybody. Not many countries have leasehold laws, and so it's often not widely understood why leasehold over freehold. So I think freehold gives a lot more confidence, and I guess that's what I've really appreciated, and why I focused specifically on Lusail when we mentioned it, that Lusail is now a freehold area. I think again, it's just part of the evolution and of when years ago I bought a property in England, and I'd never heard of a leasehold, and when they told me that I had 96 years remaining in the lease, I didn't even know what that even meant. And I think there's education required really of the investing market to fully understand what leasehold is. Again, I'm very comfortable with it now. I'm very used to it now, but it will take some education. But if someone was to ask me my formal opinion, I would prefer that more and more areas are freehold, and that's what we've seen. They've increased the number of freehold areas. Maybe that increases more in the future. I really don't know, but I would certainly welcome it if it did.
Yeah, because I think freehold clarifies things. Like it's not confusing. Like especially with the calculation of the age of the property on the leasehold and all of that. I think a freehold makes more sense to the buyer. It's more attractive, and you feel more comfortable and safe with it. But that's why I asked this question, because the leasehold is kind of, especially since it's saying 99 years, right? So I don't know if that's attractive as well for non-Qataris to buy something that has a leasehold. But at the same time, I'm wondering, like, why are these areas are on leasehold rather than a freehold?
Yeah, I really don't have I don't know the answer as to why some have been selected and some have not. Um, it's a good question, and I'll hope to come back to you one day if I have the answer for you.
We have an
So
interesting question from I'm just gonna, sorry, jump in. We have a lot of questions coming in from the audience, which is great. We're gonna try to get to as many of them as possible. One of them from Estefania, she asks if there are any additional expenses that the owner would have to incur annually. Is there any other type of payment besides administration and maintenance fees? From my understanding, no, but Jeffrey, I don't know if you had any further thoughts on that.
Yeah, again, great question, Estefania. I think you've actually highlighted the main charges. Once you own the property, depending on the area, there is often service charges, and so that's the terminology that's used in Qatar and places like the States or Canada. They're referred to as, often condo fees, or in Australia, body corporate charges.
I
So
think
it's
we lost
basically
you
a
a
fee
little
that
bit
goes to
there.
the developer. That's or the pay. You'll want to check when you're buying. Oh, apologies. I'll just go through it quickly again. So Estefani's correctly referred to the service charges, which would be due. And so depending on where your property is, there are certain charges associated with owning it, just as there are with any country. You want to, when you're buying a property, there's again, it depends on the area, but if you're buying it in, say, the Pearl area, the Pearl as an example, there's a title deed fee of 1.25%. If you're buying in different areas, that can be lower, but it's good to budget to double check what the title deed fees are for the property that you're purchasing. And indeed, if you're using a brokerage, there can be brokerage fees depending on the property that you're buying and the broker that you're using. So it's always good to ask your broker specifically what those fees are. And certainly if someone contacts our office, we'll go through all of those to say, these are the service charges for this property. These are any transfer fees that you need to pay, or indeed our brokerage fee. And it's always good to ask those questions up front and make sure it's all clarified.
Of course, and that's something we always recommend. Ask questions. I know a lot of these things can be confusing, not only to those on the side who are, buying or renting, but I think it's always good for people looking for properties, whether for investment or to live in, to just ask up front and just to get the information you need to know before making a huge decision like that. I wanted to just pivot a little bit, and we can come back to questions like that, but this was what's really interesting to me is kind of the climate that we're in as Qatar. And I think IDA also asked a question regarding the political climate and kind of things that are happening between the neighboring countries. I think it's just really interesting to see when this law is taking place. I think we know what's going on geopolitically in the region. I think we also know that with 2022 just around the corner in 2 years, there's a lot happening in Qatar. So from my perspective, it's a great timing. I've lived in the country for a long time, and it's something to me I see as a step in the positive direction. I think it helps Qatar, towards its goal at the end of the day of economic diversification. It also makes it a very appealing place to invest as opposed to some other countries. But I wanted to see Jeffrey and Ahmed as well, what you guys think about the time that we're in right now and the timing of the law and what your thoughts were on that.
Ahmed, please go ahead.
So I think, to be honest with you, it's like looking at the situation of the country, even if the last few years, I think everything has been going well, to be honest. I don't think it was impacted so much. And this is just, I believe, like, I'm a Qatari, obviously, but I believe that this law actually gives more, I keep saying stability, but that's the only word that comes to my mind, that it gives more, I would say, trust to the government from non-Qataris and foreigners. Like you can come here and stay here for as long as you can, and you can basically trust the government that you're or the country that you're living in for as long as you want, basically. So I don't think it's affected so much by it, to be honest.
And I just add in, I think probably, like a lot of things that have changed over the last 3 years. I think, a lot of the changes that have come through were always in plan, or as part of a larger plan. And I think it's just accelerated a lot of the changes. And I think investment law it's not a surprise that that has been accelerated as a result of recent issues. I think, but also, I think I think one of the great benefits of the World Cup is some of the benefits, some of the things that have changed in regards to labor policies have all been very, very positive for the country. And again, as I said, I was actually on a webinar with some ministry officials recently, and as with any country, things can always improve. Everyone's looking to improve and to move things forward, and that's one thing again I've seen since the 14 years I've been here is that things continuously improving. So I think the government will continue to look at things and how to ensure that the investment climate gets better and better in the future, and that's what we're seeing today with this new law.
Completely agreed. Yeah, and I think also just knowing that this law was set now, so we're about 2 years out from the World Cup. I just wanted to see what you guys thought about in terms of post World Cup. So do we anticipate there's going to be a large influx of people wanting to invest now before 2022? Is it to set up that period 2 years before, see how it goes and see how things need to be adjusted? Or what do you think we're going to see, pre 2022 and post the games? Jeffrey, what do you think about that?
I arrived, just coincidentally, I didn't come for the Asian Games in 2006, but I arrived a month and a half before 2006. And all the talk was that as soon as the Asian Games are over, everyone was leaving. And I always love a phrase like everyone, that everyone is leaving. Now, when I arrived in 2006, the population of Qatar was 750,000 people. Today, it's 2.5 million. And I don't think the 2.5 million number increased from 750,000 because of the World Cup. In other words, this was a part of Qatar's trajectory as the country develops. Although I'm Canadian, I am actually a big football fan. I'm really excited about it. I'm looking forward to it. But the investment market, the real estate market, is not solely based, nor will it ever be solely based on the World Cup. I think it'll be a benefit. And it will come and it will go, and we'll continue to move strongly forward as a country. So I encourage people, do not invest. If your goal is to invest just to benefit from the World Cup, I would have a longer time horizon than 6 weeks in November, December, 2 years from now. So I'm very relaxed about it, and I look at the 2030 vision that the Emir has put forward. It's exciting times indeed to be in Qatar.
Yeah, if you allow me also to add in your answer, Jeffrey, I think the World Cup is more of a catalyst to complete the infrastructure projects that we have. So the way we should look at the World Cup, I think after 2 years that we have, or let's say more or less a completed infrastructure with a lot of access to a lot of new areas, with a lot of transportation modes, with a lot of landscapes that are going to interest people and locations that are going to interest people. So the way we should look at it, I think that it's a milestone that will introduce us to a new time basically after the World Cup. So and that's another milestone that we'll have to look forward there as well.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
So I have another, we had a question, or let's say a similar question that came up a few times, that can, let's say, 2 people or 3 people buy one property and all of them get the same benefits?
Great question. I think I should have had that on my FAQs.
Yeah.
So the quick answer is no. In other words, if you can have a property, as you say, invested by 2 or 3 people, if someone would like to have the benefits of the RP, one person has to be selected. So let me give you 2 quick scenarios. So if it's a husband and wife, actually one of the 2 has to be selected. And normally, and ladies forgive me, but normally that would be would be, say, if it's my wife and I would apply, and then my wife and my children would benefit through the family visa process that comes along with an RP. If I bought a property with my brother, then my brother and I would fight it out as to who gets the benefit. But only one of the 2 of us could.
And your family is included, right?
That's correct. So basically, your RP is treated as a family visa. Yeah.
And it includes parents, from what I understand, right?
So for your parents, you have to apply specifically, and it is reviewed by the committee. So I'm not aware of all the regulations and methodologies they use to determine whether parents are approved or not, but you can apply for parents once you have it in place, and then it's subject to a committee approval.
Okay, and since we're on the family scenario here, what happens in case of like when it comes to inheritance? Like if somebody, God forbid, passes away and they have the property, does it go to the let's say they have non-Qatari kids as well? Does it go to their kids, the property itself, and RP?
Did my wife ask you to ask that question? Can you check to see who asked? That's a great question. It's a great question. So I'm not a lawyer, nor am I I'm not an estate attorney. My strongest advice to anybody investing in any country, including their own country, is to have a well-prepared will from that country, and have it well prepared by a lawyer, and have it crystal clear in your will what you'd like to have happen in the unfortunate event of your demise. Do not have and this goes for any country. If I'm Canadian and I have a property in England, a Canadian will is great, but it's best to have a will in England. And if you have properties in multiple countries, have wills in multiple countries. So I would strongly recommend to anyone, particularly in this market, is to have a will based in Qatar, established through a Qatar-based legal firm.
Go ahead.
I read in an article that it's if it's a part, like if it's in the one of the mentioned areas basically, and the non-Qatari inherited the property, it's fine. But if it's in a location that's not mentioned in these areas, he will have, or he or she will have to basically sell the property, or like find another way to give it to a Qatari basically, or give it to back to the government or something.
Yeah.
So that's what I read in an article.
Yeah, I unfortunately know many sad cases of people that did not have things well set before they passed, and it can cause a lot of pain for the survivors. So that's why I said I think my wife asked you to ask the question, because I need to improve her situation.
But I think it's a very important question to me, and I think it's going on the mind of a lot of people.
It is it's very, very important question to ask, and a very good one to take care of.
And another question we have from Sandeep Raj. So if someone comes to buy a property on tourist visa, will the tourist visa be converted to RP before his or her departure?
That specific question, I'm not sure of the answer to. Normally, I think if you switch from a tourist visa to a job, normally you had to leave the country, even if it was just to do a visa run in and out. So yeah, I would think that would be the case. Haajerah, are you aware?
Yeah, I again, not sure of the specifics, but I have heard that obviously if you're coming here as an investor to search for properties, that switch would still need to be done, and that usually requires an exit and an entry again. I think a lot, like even me, when I've had to renew or change my residency permit, I've had to kind of leave the country and come back. So I believe that still applies in this case. But that's actually a really good question, and these are details that we'd have to find out and have to be ironed out as we learn more about this law. There was one question that I've seen repeated a few times, and I know this is a lot of speculation, and again, this is what's so fun about things like that, because we can talk and debate about it. But a lot of people are asking, what is the best area to invest in, especially for expats? One gentleman said that, the Pearl is great and everybody loves the Pearl, but the prices there are just very astronomical, as was put. So I think it would be interesting to see what your perspective is, Jeffrey, or what are those kind of great up and coming areas for expats to be looking at, where prices are a bit more reasonable and development is still underway, or areas that would be really popular in the next couple of years in Qatar?
Yeah, great question. And one of the things I'll often say to clients when I'm meeting with them is that whatever opinion you might have about the property, it is often reflected in the price. In other words, to the gentleman's or the other people's comments saying, the Pearl's great, everyone loves going there, but the prices are high. Yep, they're higher because everyone loves to go there, and it's very, very popular. So it tends to be reflected in the price. So, but if I look at today, and I'll just pick a few quick markets, if I just look at really say the Pearl and Lusail, which is often a question that people ask, So Lusail, on a price basis, tends to be better value than the Pearl today. There's a lot of excellent projects that are in the market, and frankly, that obviously we have access to. And there's quite a number of projects that people can buy on a payment plan where they don't have to obtain a mortgage from a bank, which is also very, very attractive. So I think, with any investor, it really depends on what their personal needs are. I mean, I'll often speak to people that have a certain price point and they want to be directly on the water. And sometimes those, the price point that they're at and the view in the style they want, there isn't a match. So it's often a case of just managing expectations and really talking through all the opportunities. But if I look at the opportunities today that are available to an investor or to an owner-occupier compared to when I arrived 14 years ago, huge increase of the different options that are available. And again, shameless plug, we'd be more than happy to speak to anyone who wants to have that discussion.
That's amazing. I think a lot of the questions that are going to come out of this law are a lot of logistical things, which it makes sense because for a lot of people living in Qatar, I mean, for me, for example, you're sponsored, and now hearing that there's an option to, change your residency permit or your sponsorship to a property, it's a very interesting concept, and it's something that will have a lot of details that need to be ironed out. One question was that someone from the audience asked was, does this need to be done right away? So if I'm sponsored now by my employer, whoever my sponsorship is under, and I make an investment and I buy a property, is that something that has to happen right away? Do I have a choice even if I want to do that? Or have those details kind of been published yet?
Again, very good question. It is not mandatory at all that you must switch your RP to your property. Therefore, you can do it whenever you want to. So you can, there are a lot of people, and again, I recognize some of the names on the call today. There are a lot of people on the call today that I know have properties, that have title deeds, and that are working here and have their RPs with their companies. They can stay there and the property just continues on as normal. And if they want to switch, they can switch. If they want to switch in a year's time, they can switch in a year's time. It's really, there's no mandatory requirement that you switch to your property.
That's amazing that the flexibility is there. I think we have time for one more question. I don't know, Ahmed, if you want to go for it. I thank you guys so much for everyone who's listening. We have so many questions. I'm trying to scroll through them. We're trying to get through as many as possible. So we'll take one more.
I'm wondering if Jeffrey has a question for us.
So I wanted to ask you guys, I mean, frankly, with your business and as Hapondo and what you guys do on a daily basis, have you seen any sort of uptick in traffic to your website over the last, since the law has changed or the last few months? Like what have you seen in your business over the last few months?
So I mean, I can start and
yeah,
Ahmed, you can jump in. So for right now, Hapondo, we deal mainly with rental properties, and that's something, as we're relatively new. But in seeing now the new law and seeing now how Qatar is changing, properties for sale is something we definitely have our eye on. But it's also really interesting to see the connection between when laws of property sales, how much that impacts rents, because now you have people who are purchasing properties and then putting them up for rent, and noticeably or hopefully you think prices will be stabilized. There's going to be price changes, and so for us, I think the pandemic definitely had an impact on people, whether it was they were leaving Qatar or they were looking to downsize, or they just weren't able to make that change right now. So I think in the past 3-4 months, we've definitely seen an uptick. In October, we had amazing traffic in our website. So whether or not that's attributed to the law, I don't think we can say for sure, but I think that maybe it definitely had an impact. I think so. The law was announced in the beginning of October, and we're here now in the middle of November. I think people are trying to wrap their heads around it. I mean, as am I. I'm still trying to find out more details about it because it just gives you so many more possibilities. So I'm currently I rent my apartment. I rent in the Pearl, and that's kind of always been the only option I had, was to find an apartment to rent. And I think about how much money I spend on my monthly rent, and I added it up. I actually sat and did the calculations over the past 8 years that I've been paying rent, and I was just astonished at how much of a dent that could have made into potentially investing in a property. So I'd say on the business level of Hapondo, we've definitely seen good traffic in October. We're hoping that, you know, the law might have had something to do with it, but we're not so sure. But I think as us as a business, we're also thinking much more about entering, you know, that space of sale. And I think that's definitely something we're hoping to implement by next year. At the personal level, for me as Haajerah, I am definitely thinking about my options in terms of where I live, in terms of the amount I spend on rent. It's also really interesting for someone who's lived in Qatar for so long, and I see myself being there for, you know, long term. It does make me feel like I could have more stability living there if I have a place that either I own to live in or I own to generate some income from. It changes a lot of the outlook. So I think that's more of a personal perspective. Ahmed, I'd love to hear what you would think though about it.
No, when it comes to Hapondo, I know that we've been getting a lot of questions about buying properties. I even just saw one of the audience asking the same question. So when it comes to Hapondo itself, I think of course it's good for us that, but as of now, you know, we are only rental. But now with this law, it actually gives us an opportunity to see that that we have a lot of people who are interested in getting new properties. And at the same time, as you know, in Hapondo, we like to share the information that we have as well, like to give recommendations, to give an idea about prices, to give an idea about which locations or areas are best, and even when it comes to types of properties. So I think all of this information are going to help us, and with this new law, of course, it opens a new window for us as well. So I think that's the general idea I have.
And I'm just going to just add in kind of a, just sort of follow on from my kind of question to you guys, just for advice to people that are looking to invest, is a really good way when you're looking at it, if you're looking at it for an investment, to get an idea of, you know, if I buy this property, how much can I rent it for, is literally to obviously just go to Hapondo and have a look at the website, look at the properties that are available, and you get a pretty good idea, a pretty good range of prices to help you in your decision making. So, you know, when you're speaking to somebody about buying something, you can look and say, well, what is a 2-bed in zigzag? What is, you know, a 1-bed in the Pearl? If it's full marina view, you'll get a pretty good idea by going to your site and having a look, and it'll help a lot with the decision making.
Agreed. I think window shopping is always great when it comes to properties. I think take your time, check what's out there. Also know, and it's really difficult sometimes to know this, but for the month of October for us, we had really good traffic, and we've seen that rent prices were slightly lower. So it's always good for everyone to do their due diligence, ask around. Real estate agencies like NelsonPark, everyone's there to help. So I mean, I wish I would have known a lot of these things that I was looking for because I was just so overwhelmed by the process. But there are people who are really out there trying to help and give you the information you need. And with that, I think it is time to wrap up. We went a few minutes over time, but I know we have so many more questions. Hopefully this will not be the last time we do something like this. Apologies that the cameras weren't working, but it ended up being a really cool podcast. So we hope you guys enjoyed our talk here today. I'm gonna do one more poll just to kind of see if you guys are still awake and out there. I'd like to thank again Jeffrey for all of his amazing insights into this new law. There's still so much we have to learn about it, and I think it's really going to impact a lot of us who are either living in Qatar, who are expats, or those abroad who are looking to potentially relocate to Qatar or invest in the country. So I think there's a lot of exciting things happening, and I think now I always think of everything to me is in terms of the World Cup being 2 years away. It's a great time to start looking, to start making those decisions. So I think that will wrap it up. Thank you guys so much. Thank you for your questions. I'll just share the results of the last poll that you gave us. When would you purchase a property? I think that time frame is very interesting. 1 year and above, that's usually for me, I would think that's the time frame you need to make such a decision about that. The time frame you need to make a decision like that. But great, thank you guys. Oh, go ahead.
I'm saying it makes sense, to be honest.
You need to think about when you're making large decisions like that.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you to the NelsonPark team. And if you guys ever need more information about this, you can contact us. You can contact the NelsonPark team or the Hapondo team. Check us out on social media as well. And we hope you will join us for our future events. Thanks, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.